All right. Hello there, healthcare humans. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of The Other Human in the Room. I am extremely excited. My body feels actually quite like calm and happy to be in the internet presence of the person I have on the podcast with me. And I'm excited to introduce her to all of you officially who listen to the podcast because Jamie Lee Finch, who I'm looking at through a Zoom screen, is a person I have looked at through a Zoom screen a lot this year and have deep personal gratitude for the work that we've done together. And those who have listened to more than one episode know I have talked about embodiment and talked to other people about embodiment in a few different ways. And I will say that the embodiment work I have done with Jamie has been really transformative to my life over the past year. So much so that I'm like, hey, Jamie, do you want to like work together? Do you want to do a workshop with me, etc.? And so I'm just excited to kind of go public with like my admiration and adoration for this person. So that's how I want to introduce you, Jamie, and say right up top, though I will say it at the end, one of the things we're doing while recording this conversation is inviting all of you to join the party with us in a workshop that we will be hosting October 24th at 8 p.m. Eastern in 2023. So I just going to say that right up top. But then now we're just going to talk a bit. So Jamie, do you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for saying all of that and also for having me here. And I'll just say before I get into my own intro, I was listening to you say all of that and viewing you through my Zoom screen and also having that experience of kind of remembering how frequently we've looked at each other through the screen and like how much has happened. And then a lovely little somatic memory of the excitement that I felt in my body when you sent me that voice memo with like the idea for this and the workshop and what's coming next too. And just like how loud and obvious the yes was in my body to all of it. And it feels really fun and cool that we're kind of full circle in that now, because that was like the end of July that I remember so vividly when I listened to the voice memo. At least sometimes it takes me a few days, but so I'm just feeling really amazed and really grateful. So yes, I'm Jamie Lee Finch. I wear a lot of hats. A friend of mine recently said something that I really loved. She said, I'm a writer with many pens. And I really love, I know, beautiful description. And I literally am a writer too. So that kind of works. But maybe more present to this current conversation is that I'm a facilitator. I'm a verbal facilitator and I'm a hands-on facilitator. I am pursuing my licensure in massage therapy. And so I've already started putting my hands on bodies, which is great because I have been talking to people about their relationship with their bodies for the past 7 years. As my full-time professional work, I have worked with hundreds of people. I have somewhere in the ballpark of around 6,000 to 7,000 hours of that verbal facilitation under my belt, whether one-on-one or group facilitation. And as far as I know, Joan, you were the first like medical professional that I've worked with. I worked with loads of therapists and loads of like people in mental health care. But I cannot really recall, and I'll feel a little bad if I'm just forgetting, but I really don't think I am. I can't recall there being someone who works in like kind of the area of physical body healthcare. And working with you totally transformed me too. And the parallel of working with you at the same time that I was beginning to put my hands on bodies just feels really serendipitous to the degree of practically miraculous. And I am just really excited to be here having this and many future conversations with you.
Thank you. I received that. And yeah, it's been like quite a year. Hey, I think one thing I want to share just a teeny bit about what it was like to work with you, only because so I'm a family physician, and some of what I would bring to our weekly calls would be talking about my work in healthcare. Additionally, this past year, something I've already shared on the podcast is that my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and so had like quite not only like a thing happening in my personal life, but like a medical body related thing to someone happening quite close to me, which obviously impacted my body as well.
Yeah.
And the fact that it didn't feel good, all of the parts of it, but like having you as this touch point to come to, and really like the central question that you would ask me and we would explore is like, how is my body doing? How am I feeling? And in
Mhm.
particular, like the deepest kind of question that I learned to ask through your support is like, what is my body trying to tell me? Like, and actually be in conversation with my body.
Yes. Mhm.
Um, it may sound a bit foreign to those who haven't heard the idea of talking to your body and listening back, but it isn't as abnormal as you might think if you
Yeah.
haven't considered it,
It's also not as hard as you might think if it sounds abnormal to you in this current
Right.
moment. Like surprisingly, it's not easy, but it's shockingly simple to some degree.
And that's actually the thing that I was like, oh, Jamie, could we work together? Because
Mhm.
the way you talk about embodiment and practically guide people through experiences of feeling more embodied, and maybe just to say, I love your definition of embodiment. My definition is like physically and sort of holistically experiencing the fact that you have a body is sort of
Oh,
what we mean by embodiment,
yes, I
and being
love
like,
that.
here I am with my body,
Mhm.
I have a body, I am a body, I'm with a
Mhm.
body, like all the
Mhm.
ways. That is what we mean
Yep.
by embodiment. And the reason we need that term is because most of us have experienced quite a bit of disembodiment to
Mhm.
forget that we have bodies.
Mhm.
um so, oh, now I forget what the original train of thought is. I just like went into a definition. Um, no, I think it's gone. How about let's just whatever train I was on, it'll come back if it's supposed to. But I actually would like, so those are some of my definitions I'd heard
Mhm.
previously, but I feel like I experienced more like practically
Yeah.
through the work with you. And maybe that's what I was really just trying to say. At a
Yeah, I
time
think you were
when
getting to the point of talking about how it was surprisingly simple.
surprisingly simple,
Mhm.
and also like a super powerful tool isn't correct, like lens in which to view
Yeah,
one's life and
that's
experience
it.
one's life
Mhm.
through a job that has like historically been extremely taxing on me emotionally and personally,
Yeah.
even though I love it. And then this thing
Mhm.
happening in my personal life, which was, I anticipated it to be extremely taxing on me, and it certainly took energy. But being in the presence of you and learning how to be with myself as a
Mhm.
body, this was not the worst year of my life. And
Yeah.
and I really think part of it was the work we did together.
Yeah,
So,
you had her with you in it. And so
yes,
the worst things or the hard things become invitations, opportunities. They don't stop being difficult, but you
yes,
just find this ability to create meaning and
yes,
growth from the difficult things because you feel this kind of dual sensation of the support from your body and the support back towards your body in
yes.
this reciprocal relationship that you come into realizing that you're in the first place.
Yeah. So with that, I would love, like, however much makes sense for you to share, like, how did you come to this understanding? Have you always felt this deeply embodied, or has it been a journey? I
It's
say
been a
knowing it's been a
journey.
journey. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll just name this too. It has been about 2 years since I've recorded a podcast, since I've been on a podcast. That has been, well, it wasn't originally intentional, and then I saw that it was happening, and then I realized why it needed to happen, and then I just like released into the intentionality of it. And so it's been a while since I've had to answer this question, and so it's fun to like feel around and play with like what feels true and how to answer that question today. Like, how did I find this? And
Yeah.
the thing that feels most present and true to name today about that, because I feel like it's such a dynamic answer because it's such a dynamic reality, is that um like she found me in it, and that happened by way of just existing in what we would maybe call a non-normative body, like a body who has complexities and difficulties and illnesses and pains that have been present I could even say chronically, for the majority of my life. And it was quite a journey, kind of making my way out of the standard or normative consciousness that the inanimate object of my body is getting in the way of my ability to like be good and successful here in the human experience, and instead recognize and realize and honestly like be open to and willing to change my opinion about, well, I almost just went straight to her character, but I had, you got to back up and stuff and be like, the fact that she's a her at all, the fact that, you know, the itness of the body is a misconception. And it's an understandable misconception that's rooted in like individual and collective survival strategies, because like it's hard to have a body because the body is the place where you feel everything that happens. And if you don't have people like adults who are able to feel everything that happens to them and breathe through it and regulate themselves when you're a kid, if that's not the reality that your primary caregivers modeled to you and then taught you how to do, then you grow up and you become an adult human person, or like just a bigger human person who has been here longer. I mean, there's no such thing as adults, but like you end up becoming who you think you are, which is a person that needs to be in some kind of resistance against or control over your physicality. That is kind of standard normative consciousness in regards to like the having a body, being a body, which is something we are even, in increasing measure trying to like pretend like isn't a reality. Like we're trying in increasing measure to pretend like bodies aren't here at all and we don't need them, which is, I don't need to get into that right now. That's like all of my deeper work. But in answering this question, for a long time, I struggled with the fact that I couldn't really drop into like the forgetting of the body because my body was too loud, because how I would have explained it in the past is like, she's really inconvenient. She has these pains or these imbalances, these disruptions, these illnesses that are causing me these inconveniences that like make me move at her pace instead of mine, and that sucks and it shouldn't be that way. And so like for many years I was taught, and what was modeled for me was like resist her, reject her, fix her, do everything you can to not feel the way it actually feels to have a body who is constantly reminding you of the present moment and what sensation feels like in the present moment. And about 7 years ago, many different things happened that, again, I won't necessarily get into. There's like so many podcasts where I tell versions of this story, but about 7, 8, maybe 8 years ago now, I started I lost my former religion, which was the structure that told me to resist her. And when I lost that structure, or the kind of, the principal's office of that, I realized there was no reason for me to like continue to ignore and suppress the sensations in my body. So I went on this journey of like paying attention to and really feeling the sensations in my body. And that led me into curiosities about my illnesses and imbalances, and as opposed to just like the standard default posture of resistance. And from that space of curiosity, like curiosity was the beginning of everything. Becoming curious about her instead of controlling. And maybe I'll say it this way, becoming just curious about my body instead of controlling towards my body allowed me to realize, oh, this curiosity makes sense because my body is saying and doing things in response to what I am saying and doing towards my body. That feels pretty alive. That doesn't feel like an inanimate object that I'm interacting with in my world. That feels like a person this feels like a relationship. This feels reciprocal. This feels like a call and response. This feels like a conversation. This feels like communication. And so I started leaning into referring to my physical body with a personified pronoun, calling her she, her, instead of using the word it. I gradually retired the word it completely from my from my language. And then because I was already doing facilitation, doing coaching work at that point, that just started to naturally integrate itself into the way I did facilitation. And then it just like mycelium just like took over, like the whole thing, just like, okay, great. It just spread, and it just like, it started to influence every corner of how I was showing up in my facilitation. And I really started to see how that seemingly simple shift of call your body a person, recognize that your body is a person, and then engage in dialogue with that person, that started, I mean, it started transforming the lives of the people that I was working with. And it felt very much like I wasn't doing, all I was doing was leading them to a concept that had worked for me. And then I was watching them and their bodies take over from there. And so it felt like this really powerful, astounding wisdom, because nobody owns it. Because if someone can just, if you can get back here, that's all that needs to happen. It's a language that you can learn how to speak. And once you learn how to speak it, and I know I said this to you, and I say this to all my clients when I work with them, you are not in danger of forgetting. Like when I work with people for like 4 months at a time, and then we come to an end of the 4 months, I love to reflect to them, like, you have spent 4 months conceptualizing of your body as a living being and allowing me to facilitate communication between the two of you. You are equipped. You will not, this is not going to just drop out of your brain. Your body will never go back to being an it, and just hang on, because the ride's about to get really fucking fun. Like, it's going to get really good from this point, because now you know they're here, they're talking to you, they love you, and that's the beginning of everything.
That's it. And I mean, there's so much there. I think, because like one thing I'll say, because I just think it's so good, like the name of your course and is Your Body as a Person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just such clear and simple language. And you described it so well of like all that means if you're like, what if you treat your body like a person?
Mm-hmm.
I think the thing that works really well for, I think more than just me, like others who are listening, folks who probably are attracted to my work is, so I definitely used to just pretend I didn't have a body. Like it would just be inconvenient when it's like, oh, I guess I'm so exhausted, I have to fall asleep or whatever. Or I'd
Yeah.
like, pour caffeine into her or what, like, let's go, let's get it done. Let's like try and control.
Mm-hmm.
But really I almost like conceptualize myself as like floating thoughts with like a body attached. And
I've heard that a lot. Mm-hmm.
Right. And I thought, I was like, is this just how everyone feels, or is I the weirdo? Right. So it's like that thing. And so the idea that I like about it is some other ways of getting into embodiment work where it's all like, even just like listen to your body, which is a little bit what you're saying, but you're like, but what does that mean? And you're in this weird distant space from your body. So there's something of a relief to be like, oh, I don't have to like totally enmesh myself with my body. I can still think of my body as somewhat separate, but in conversation with.
Yes.
I find it a very, for me, and especially because like all humans, we're relational people. We've been in a relationship with another person before.
That's right. Yeah.
And a lot of like, the best, say, self-compassion type exercises I've heard that are nice is like, pretend you're talking to a little kid, pretend you're talking. And it's sort of the same thing, because like if you just try and offer yourself self-compassion, and your entire life you have been taught to deeply criticize and like beat yourself up and like beat the crap out of yourself from the inside out, you're like, I can't. That's not against my programming. But like, what if you just like treated your body with a bit more compassion?
That's it. It's a sneaky little backdoor entry into all these kind of these very often ambiguous seeming and feeling ideas of self-love and like, how do I, because you named it perfectly, like there's this struggle that I've experienced in the conversations that I've had with people in the last 7 years in all areas of my facilitation. There is this, I've heard people name repeatedly this like consistent struggle of like, there's the programming to overcome of like, I don't deserve it. It's the shame programming. It's just shame programming. And this idea of conceptualizing of your body as like a separate person you're in relationship with, the thing, like you're naming it too, we already know how to do this. There's like hundreds of thousands of books written on like whether it's marriage or partnership or parenting or just being like a better friend or a better coworker, you know. And when I say better, I don't mean like more morally good, but like more present and aware of your own reactivity so that you can slow it down, breathe through it, and then respond with compassion. Like there's pretty well known kind of like, for lack of a better term, blueprints for like how to do that in relationship with other people. We just aren't conceptualizing of like ourselves as the people that deserve that. So if you can make your body a person and then relate to their reactivity, their sensations, their emotions in the same way that you are learning how to engage with the reactivity and sensations and emotions from other people that you are in relationship with. Again, it's not easy work, but it's surprisingly simple how much these things just automatically apply to your own relationship with your own physicality when you start conceptualizing of your physicality as a living being instead of an inanimate object.
Yeah. It's so fun also. That's the other
It's also very
thing.
fun. It's really fun and it feels good. Here's the
Yes.
bottom line. It feels good. And that is not some like woo or like soft science result. This is something anyone who listens to this who continues to engage with me in any way is going to maybe eventually get tired of hearing me say this all the time. But when I'm talking about things feeling good and I'm talking about feelings, I'm not talking about a conceptual emotional state. I'm talking about the state of your nervous system. I am talking about how activated or regulated your actual nervous system is. That's really what we're talking about. We're talking about emotions. It's the state of your nervous system. So when I say that doing this, maybe not even say doing this work, but living this way, you used the word lens earlier. I love that lens, like learning how to place this lens on all of your movements through the world in this body that you are in and are partnered with. It feels good because it is a relaxing way to be in relationship with your own self, with your own sensations. Like life is going to happen to you. You're going to have stories that come up in your mind. You're going to have hard sensations and emotions to feel. That's just the human experience. No one gets off this ride without having a body. That's part of the deal. Why? Don't know, but it's just how we're all here. So this idea of caring about how we physically feel, that has to start mattering to us because that is an indicator of the state of our nervous system. And our nervous system is the kind of leader system in the body that is speaking to and powering, hopefully successfully, the other 12, 13 systems in our body. So our immune system is not going to be functioning in the way that it really needs to be functioning if our nervous system is in a chronic state of activation. So this is, again, don't need to unpack all of this right now, but I have such a passion for like making this thing that sounds so soft and unserious of feeling good. I have such a passion for like anchoring it in the reality of our physiology and saying like that feeling good has to start mattering to us because how you feel is an indicator of the state of your nervous system, and that determines everything about the state of your body and your well-being and how you show up and move through the world.
Yes. Like, maybe I'll give an example actually from yesterday of something that I do like regularly now. And especially during times of like when I'm feeling stressed or whatever, which is that like I open a conversation with my body, or for the medically minded, I consult my body, if you
I
will.
love that. Yeah, I
So my
love that.
colleague, my body is now my colleague. That's actually like the workshop we're going to do. We called it body to body medicine because I've learned that like actually my body has some really interesting ideas for me when I am in my head and spinning and don't know what to do next. So like one example from yesterday was I got a call. I'm a family physician, and I got a call from a hospitalist who let me know that one of my patients is in the hospital. And I don't even actually know in retrospect if there was a tone or any actual accusations that I'd been neglecting my patient, but that's like the way it all unfolded in the story that was revealed about this patient. That was the shame story I picked up and ran with and felt
Yeah.
terrible about.
Yeah.
And then I was spinning, and I was immediately like, my old programming is to like get out of the shame story. It's like actions, like what could I have done differently? What should I do differently? Am I actually a bad doctor? And an interesting thing that came up through that was like, well, all the work I've done to like, work less and feel better.
Mhm.
This is what happens when you are selfish and feel
Mm,
better,
how interesting. Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
was like, okay, here's all these stories running. And so one thing I do is I'm like, body, what do you have to say about this?
Yeah.
And what my body let me know. And I want to be clear, like, I'm not hearing a voice, but like the message that was very clear from my body is that she was sad. She
Yeah.
was sad for my patient because the kinds of patients that we often feel more hyper responsible for are the ones that do not have other people in their lives. And that it was certainly true for this particular person, and who
Mm.
over the years had often seemed very precarious and yet chugging along. And then looking back and seeing when we were last in contact, I just felt so sad about their state and what led them to hospital. And I just like let myself and my body feel sad that like,
Yep. Yep.
without having to do a blame, shame, responsibility, what should I have done,
Exactly.
da da da.
Yeah.
Really, like, before I could even think clearly about if I wanted to reflect or learn, I had to, my body shared with me what we really needed to be doing, which was to feel really sad and kind of grieve that this is what can happen to humans in this lifetime.
That's right. And guess what? You can't stop it. Like,
No.
you have some degree of ability to partner with people in their own journey, in their own experience, in their body, and you have a wealth of knowledge and information about how to do that as a family physician. And
And mhm.
and and this is what is so like, as your colleague, I'm like, amazing story. As your previous coach, I'm like, I'm so proud of you, because what you are explaining here is like this like gorgeous wisdom that seems so simple, to the degree where like, I don't know, I think most of us, again, air quotes, adults, would like almost dismiss it within ourselves as being a trivial thing, like, oh, I don't need to feel the sadness. That's a waste of my time, because there's a job to do. There's something to do. And this is the fun game we play as humans with, stories in our heads as like our idea of being people, but like we're partnered with these bodies, where our bodies are like, hi, actually, there's a sensation that I need to invite you to feel about what is going on in the present moment. And if you don't feel this sensation, or if you develop a story that, that then you immediately begin to believe that you can't feel the sensation, or you're not allowed to feel the sensation, or the sensation is a waste of time, our physical bodies are going, hey, there's a stress response that has been created by way of this experience that we are having, which is a normal human experience for something disappointing or scary or hard to happen to you. Your physical body is your partner in going, oh, okay, stress response. Can we actually like, feel how this feels to have this like mild to moderate stress response in this moment, so that we can partner and release it and move it through our physicality, so it doesn't get stored in the nervous system. And our fun stories about like adulthood and like how to human the right way, and how to be a responsible doctor, how to be a responsible person, parent, whatever, those stories are survival strategies trying to, and it's so simple when you really think about it, trying to keep us slash help us from just feeling the way sadness feels. And a
Yes.
lot of that is probably rooted in the fact that during our developmental years, many of us did not have the permission to just feel sadness without our caregivers trying to fix it, or maybe even punishing us for feeling sad in front of them, because they were working out their stuff in front of us too, and they didn't know it. But bottom line here is like, it is such an understandable response for us to just pivot straight to control and shame. in a moment like that, because the harder thing to feel is a sadness that you can't actually really do anything about. But that's the truer thing that is going on almost all of the time in the human experience, is that this is a sensation that's really difficult to feel. And it's happening because of, because life is occurring, and life is occurring in ways that I cannot be in total control of. And so and because things like anger, like the anger that can come from a disposition of control and shame, is such a sweet protector emotion. This is why so many of us like will go straight to anger or like reactivity, like anger in our reactivity, and like maybe do things like become defensive or blaming towards self or others, because sadness is a more tender, like if you can conceptualize it like the little emotion characters from that movie Inside Out, that Pixar movie Inside Out, where it's like, imagine the angry character kind of like stepping in front of to defend the sad character, and how beautiful and sweet that is, and ultimately how kind of unhelpful that is for the body to be able to, again, bring it back to the physiology, for the body to be able to actually complete what needs to be completed in the stress cycle of that moment, so that that emotion and sensation can be released, so it isn't stored, it isn't carried, it isn't like made into a blueprint that then becomes a holding pattern in your physicality, and then the stories in your mind will confirm the holding pattern in your physicality. So this is all like really complex stuff, and it's stuff that we're doing because we learned how to do it when we were really young. But the invitation of being a grown person with more information and tools is to start becoming aware of your own stories, aware of your own thoughts, and primarily to learn that the sensations and emotions you're feeling are communications, attempts at communication from a body who is your partner in this work of like awakening into how it is supposed to feel to be here, like, and into, whether you want to call it a spiritual path or whatever, it doesn't matter what kind of belief framework you put it into. It just is the reality of what's happening physiologically, is that there's a stress response created. It needs to be released in some way. And so our bodies need our attention. They do not need our stories.
Yes. Because the thing that I have seen actually, and with a recent client, the same thing happened, where the old way, and what I see we do a ton of, if we don't sit with that sadness, then whatever we plan for next, one of the ultimate directives is, I never want to feel that way again. How do I, my immediate thoughts were like, okay, I need to call everyone over 65 that's in my practice and make sure they are also not, in a situation.
Get myself back in the driver's seat.
I need to adopt them all and bring them home with me. Like, it's immediately like, I need to do so much more for my patients, because this was, and like,
I need to be the perfect doctor in response
I need to
this
now
human moment. I
study
just had.
everything. And it's like, it's also sweet. And there's maybe even good ideas, not those specific ones, but like, listen, there could be some good ideas of how I want to alter, like, I can reflect on, is there anything I'd like to shift about my approach to care? But if it comes from a place of, I never want to feel this way again.
Yeah. It's the urgency that will tip you off. Yes.
And the thing is, I will feel this way again.
Yes.
No matter what. And that was one thing I remembered later, is like, especially the part of the story that's like, because you're taking care of yourself so well, that's why.
Yeah.
I'm like, Penny, you can think of a bunch of times when you were not taking care of yourself at all, and you felt this exact same way with a very similar situation. Because guess what? This is like, thing that you witness when you are in healthcare is really the tragedy of how we are not all taking care of each other.
Yes. And the reality that like, the answer cannot be to stop taking care of myself. That's
which
not
is
a
underneath all those
solution.
actions. Yeah,
totally. Yes.
Thank you for explicitly saying that.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's just that I'll get to the taking care of myself after I save all the people and all the things.
That's the sneaky part. That's the way in which we hide it from ourselves, that we're like, I'm not being mean to myself. I'm just trying to be way nicer to everybody else. It's fun. It's fun that we do that. It's very cute that we do that.
I
Mhm.
feel like very like red to feel.
Well, but here's the thing, and I know we talked about this a lot in our one-on-one work together. Like there is always a generous reframe, like always, always, always. So like it's not that like doctors are just like these exceptionally controlling and difficult to perfectionist people. I mean, if that's the read you want to have on it, sure, but you got to dig deeper. And the reason why there is this tendency for anyone who works in any form of human healthcare, the reason why there is this tendency to react and to go straight to like control or defensive or whatever is because the deeper, softer, more tender, more real reality, more real emotion that's there is incredible care. And it feels very vulnerable and very exposing when your intention and desire, your only intention and desire is care. And then something happens that reminds you that you do not have total control to be able to, care in a way that controls, manipulates, fixes every single situation for every single person. Doctors, I mean, y'all are truly, I mean, this is deep spiritual work, honestly, if you really think about it, because you are putting yourselves vulnerably, graciously, and getting into a lot of like debt, and it takes a lot of time, but like it's like this motivation to care that is so intense that every day you are meeting with person after person after person that your deepest desire is to care for, but they live in a body, and that body is going to be affected by things outside of your control. And let's just name the most obvious elephant in the room: death is inevitable at
Yeah.
some point.
Yeah.
So death is not even like a thing to fix. And that's something that you have expressed to me, like comes up, and I've seen it too, but that comes up in kind of the energy within a lot of like human healthcare spaces. But again, generous read, right? It's because that's a really hard thing for us to face, and we don't want to lose each other, and we don't want to disappoint each other, because it's hard to feel the feelings of loss and grief and disappointment. It all goes back to, where am I resisting sensation in my own body? And how is that resistance to fully feeling the sensation in the present moment in my own body causing me to react or respond out of these stories that can often look like and are dressed up as care, but are really fascinatingly sneaky little avoidances from just like anchoring into the invitation that my body is offering me in the present moment, which is to just take another deep breath.
So often
Yeah.
that last thing, which is like annoying.
Yeah, I know. Again, it's like not easy at all, but it's so simple. It's kind of
So
annoying how simple it is, that it really is just that.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I think especially because like people they're like take a deep breath, but really they're just trying to like shut you
Yeah.
down, and like
Yeah.
it's not that.
Yep.
But truly and genuinely, like the times in these past like whilst and after working with you, where if I'm in a room and I'm like I'm overwhelmed
Mm-hmm.
and the patient's doing whatever, like whether I even take a conscious deep breath, but like I
Mm-hmm.
take a breath and I
Yep.
and I feel it, like say there's like a movie camera, like I'm zooming, because I usually
Yes.
at that point I'm just like it's as if I'm like in their body and their brain, like I'm
Yep.
just swimming in them. So I like
Yeah.
come back over to my half
Yes.
of the room,
Yeah.
other human in the room, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, here's my body. And now, like often, especially if I'm like, I don't even, how do I get out of this? Or like, what do I
Yeah.
say next? I like ask her, I'm like,
Yep.
any ideas? And then
Yeah. What comes
usually
next? Mm-hmm.
there's something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
There
it
is
feels
a
good.
something, and this isn't, and I just, again, I gotta be this person again, where it's like, that's not just a phenomenon. Well, first of all, it's not a phenomenon you're just like imagining or making up. And it's also just like, it's not something that is unique and special to you. This is a physiological reality when you activate the parasympathetic nervous system in moments of stress and overwhelm, which
Yeah.
is what a deep diaphragm breath is doing. There are other ways to activate the parasympathetic nervous system too, but that's like the easiest, most accessible one in any given moment. And what happens when you activate your parasympathetic nervous system is that the parts of your brain that are kind of the lizard brain, the kind of monkey mind, the lower consciousness, we might say, that get active, that are really good in states of stress, that are just like, let's fucking handle it by like getting out of here or like fighting or whatever it might be. Those reactive parts of our brain when we take a deep breath and activate our parasympathetic nervous system, when our sympathetic nervous system has been activated, those parts of our brains settle down, and the parts of our brains that are responsible for higher forms of thinking, problem solving, and even verbal communication, like shaping language, those parts of the brain come back online. So there's a reason why, and it's not woo, it's like there is a reason why when you are feeling overwhelmed, this idea of, wait, my body's here in the room with me, let me take a deep breath and ask her what I should do next. There's a reason why answers come right after. And it's because you have been able to power on and power off the parts of your brain that are going to most helpfully facilitate that you having an answer, or just maybe not an answer, we'll just say like having a response that then is, and the main response, here's what, and I know we've talked about this too, the main response you are giving in that moment is you are now back in the ability to give your full presence to that person. And that matters so much more than any sort of answer or idea that you are then communicating out of your mouth. Like when that person in the room, when their nervous system feels that you have taken a deep breath and you can now co-regulate with them in this moment of confusion and complexity and overwhelm, that is actually the most important thing. And then whatever comes after that and follows that is going to be really good and helpful. But that's the main thing, is getting anchored in your physicality so that then you can co-anchor with the person occupying the role of patient in the room. You are co-anchoring and co-regulating with them. And the trust that is established in that moment without words at all is profound. It's really profound.
It genuinely is. And like, and sometimes it's doesn't maybe look profound from the outside, and it's like, here's a prescription, bye, like, you know, and sometimes it has led to like me offering curious questions. I've certainly been experimenting with asking patients who I perceive to be receptive to it, what's your sense of what your body is trying to tell you with this symptom?
It's beautiful.
And have been like super interested in their responses. And the level of insight, including folks that sometimes I maybe had a prejudgment wouldn't have anything, and they're like, oh, I don't really know, but maybe this. And you're like, dang, that sounds like a really interesting way of describing your musculoskeletal issue. But you know what I mean? Like, it's so neat. And like it just changes the whole tenor of the conversation. And if nothing else, like, it's sort of bizarre to like, you're two bodies in a room together.
Yes.
And yet so much of it certainly previously really came across as like, I'm just like volleying words at you and you're volleying words back. And I'm just trying to beat it all off with a stick because I'm just overwhelmed and insecure of myself, or whatever. It's like stories I used to tell, that ultimately were like you say, my nervous system was activated. I had all these survival stories about appearing a certain way or knowing a certain thing or being a certain thing that were, now I'm trying to keep up a game. Meanwhile, my body has always actually been there with me, thinks I'm pretty great. Spends her entire life, you know, keeping me alive. Thank you, body. And also their body is
also their body has been doing that too. And it's
it's so fun. Like, the one thing I've often thought, especially when I'm like, I have no idea what's going on here, I'm like, there's always one person in this room that knows exactly what's happening in that person's body, and it's that person's body. And maybe we'll never fully share, or maybe we don't have the technology to fully understand, or whatever it is. But there's always actually someone in that room that knows exactly what's happening.
They are always telling the truth. This is the thing. Bodies are always telling the truth. They are always telling the truth. It may not be an accurate read of what is really going on, but they are telling the truth about the experience that they think they are having. And again, that's a complex concept that I unpack in like my online course and my one-on-one work, but I'll just leave that as a little nugget for now. And if that lands as a complex or hard thing to hear for anyone listening, like, I've really been experimenting in my writing recently with like bringing in my somatic facilitation into my long form writing. So I'm going to invite anyone who is having difficulty and maybe notice some somatic markers of resistance and activation in their bodies when they heard me say, the body is always telling the truth. I'm going to invite you to do what Joan told us about a minute ago, and to take a very deep breath in through your nose, and then maybe even release it with an audible sigh out of your open mouth. That's a parasympathetic sigh. And then just observe, like, what is happening in your body? What stories are coming up? Why does it feel, maybe it doesn't even have to be why does it feel, but does it feel difficult to sit with the consideration of this idea that the body is always telling the truth? Like, what does that feel like to sit with that consideration? And what stories come up within you that cause you to react or resist or think that that can't possibly be true? Because I don't need to fix that. We don't need to do anything with that. The only thing there is to do with that is just notice. And then maybe also like read my Substack if you want longer explanations about what it is that I mean by that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And who knows, like, we have a good plan for some things we want to say at our workshop in a few weeks
Yeah.
as well.
Yes.
And so if there's anything in our conversation that has sparked your curiosity, or you're like, what? No way, but what? Or if you are curious about if when, a colleague calls you and appears to dump a blame story on you, how you could instead just feel your sadness or whatever. We wanted to create a space to explore with others who work in healthcare what it could really mean to really be in like a deeper, more intimate, more loving relationship with our own bodies, and how I have certainly experienced that to be truly the most powerful thing that I've been doing with my time that has allowed me to feel so much more creative, have more capacity, set firmer boundaries, be better at like time and work efficiency stuff. Like it's interesting all the implications that come when you are in relationship with your body. And so we wanted to create a space where we could explore that together via Zoom. And so if you are interested, it's Tuesday, October 24th, 2023. In case you're listening to this in the future, you may have missed it. 8 p.m. Eastern. And there will be the link in the show notes of how to register. There will be CME credits for anyone who likes, getting some credits with their learning.
I love that part. That's really cool.
I'm really excited, Jamie. I have participated in a workshop that you've hosted about social media that was amazing and really did shift my relationship with social media for sure.
I'm so glad.
And so the idea of now we get to facilitate one together, I'm super excited. So I hope everyone comes to this party that we're throwing, because it's like,
yes, that's how it feels. It really does feel. I love that. That's the language you kind of found yourself saying at the top of the show and now too, because that's exactly how it feels. It just like, this is something that when I first started my facilitation work like 7 years ago, I had this seedling of a passion to take what it was that I thought I was doing at the time, and apparently what it was that I had no idea I would eventually end up doing. I had this deep desire to take this in the direction of the medical industry. I did, like, for a minute there, I actually was planning on finishing my undergrad and then going to medical school, which is really interesting. I don't know if, did I tell you? I think maybe I did. Okay, I didn't tell you that. And I was actually going to go, this was all very preliminarily planned, but at the time, I was considering schools in Canada, actually, instead of the United States. I know this is what's so fascinating to me about all of this. So that little seedling has grown into this partnership, which is like so incredible and like better than 1,000 times better than like trying to go it alone. Like, I love partnership. I love collaboration. And I am so excited about this workshop as kind of the first step into being able to bring this message, this wisdom, this deep truth of the personhood of the body into not just like medical spaces, but particularly for healthcare, for the people who are occupying the role of doctor, for like the person, I love the name of your podcast, like the other human in the room, to remember their own humanity by way of remembering the personhood of their body. It has been like, it was an initial desire, and then it became kind of a latent, it disappeared itself from my consciousness for a little while, is what I'll say. And so I'm having a lot of fun with feeling it come back and feeling this kind of the way in which this dream is beginning to become realized. And like, you're the perfect person to do this with. And I'm so excited about it. And I'm also excited about our other future endeavor that we will be doing. And I don't know if we want to like talk about that or just continue to tease it a little bit, but it's also going to be very, very good.
Well, how about we just tease that it may involve podcasting?
Yeah.
More of us
There you go.
talking. So that's
More of this.
that's
Yeah.
the seedling for sure.
Yeah.
I'm super
Yes.
excited for it too. I think
Yes.
it'll be so good.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the end of our time together, and like truly we could talk forever, but I just thank you for this time and for sharing so much goodness already. So other than the fact that definitely anyone listening should just really just like register and come to the workshop, what other maybe advice is kind of funny, right? But like what invitation, what language do you want to leave anyone listening with, knowing like, you know, they're in the midst of it, they're may be at different stages of awareness about the fact that they have a body, much less it's a person.
Yep.
Anything that you think may be helpful for them to hear that they could take into their work in healthcare?
Yeah. I would say the biggest thing and main thing that feels important in this moment is to just name that if this all sounds surprising and like a complete paradigm shift, and therefore maybe confusing or complex, or maybe even a little bit overwhelming to consider how to shift into, that is the most normal and understandable response in the world, because this is it's not a secret, but it is wisdom that is hiding in plain sight, but it is really hidden, and it is becoming increasingly hidden as our culture becomes increasingly disembodied, which is one of the things I touched on in that workshop you attended about, you know, reclaiming our bodily sovereignty back from like the addiction and overstimulation of social media and the way that we are kind of increasingly dependent upon these nervous system disrupting devices. So it's a normal response to be like, wow, this is different. Where do I even begin? And like, you know, if you're hearing like Joan's had these shifts that have been monumental, not only in her practice, but in her just personal well-being. And those two things go together. And I would love to experience that. I would say, luckily, we've got this workshop on the 24th. And I already have an enormous number of resources to start that can help you / someone who is listening and is curious about more and maybe feeling a little overwhelmed. Over the years, I've created a number of resources that can begin to introduce this concept to you in ways that I have seen consistently change people's lives. So one of those things is that I have an online course, like you mentioned. It's called Your Body as a Person. And you can enroll anytime, and it's self-paced, and it's like 15 hours of kind of introductory content around this idea of your body being a person and what does that mean for your life. I also am actually, when this airs, this will be perfect timing. This will be true. I have actually decided to open up my my intake for one-on-one facilitation again, but I'm only going to be working with like 3 people, and I already have one of those spots like booked. So there is a really brief application if anyone is interested in doing the coaching that you did and experiencing. I mean, I would say the online course is like a great place to start, but like if you are a person who knows that one-on-one facilitation is just going to be way better for the way that you learn, I actually currently right now have that available, which is amazing because normally I only open that once a year in like February. So that is also an option. I'm not quite sure how to like point people in that direction beyond maybe just saying that if you are interested in that, maybe you can email me at hello@janieleighfinch.com. I've got a brief application, and then you can sign up for like a phone call consultation. But all of that to say, I really think the first place to start would be this workshop that we have, because it's the dual facilitation of my experience in teaching this methodology and your experience with, being a doctor and like implementing this methodology and placing this lens on all of your movements through the world. So that's what I would say, is just like take some deep breaths into recognizing that the feeling you're having about the unfamiliarity of this is normal, and take some deep breaths into realizing the resources have already been created and are available to you in this present moment to begin to resource you however you would like to be resourced in coming into a deeper understanding of this wisdom and what it could mean for you and how it could change your practice and your life.
Amen to all of that. And I will have I can link your website and put that email and like your social media stuff so that if people want to find you any of those ways, they can.
Okay, great. I'll figure that out then and we'll put it all in there.
Yeah. And
the
definitely the registration link, the podcast show notes. It's like, I like to put places there.
Yeah.
And last thing I want to say is thank you, Jamie.
Thank
I
you.
have really enjoyed getting to know you this past year. And one thing about your style of facilitation is I feel like I got to know you lots as well as you got to know me and see me cry and all the good things. And I'll just be forever grateful. And my body thanks you as well.
Yeah. Well, I am so grateful for you. And I am also so grateful for the trust that you showed to me in the way you showed up in our facilitation. It was just, in ways I will probably never really be able to accurately describe, like working with you and observing the change and the shift in your relationship with your body and like the increasing intimacy and trust that you've developed with her it is one of the most profound things I've ever witnessed. And I feel so grateful to have been able to witness it, much less like have a hand in helping to facilitate that come about. It's my favorite thing to do in the entire world. And I also hope that someday I get to like have you on my massage table and like do it that way too. That would be a dream.
That would be so cool.
Let's make that happen. I feel like we can make that happen.
You've got to at some point. That 100% is going to happen.
Yes.
I love a massage. Amazing. All right. Well, thank you all for listening, and check out those show notes for sure. Register for the workshop, and otherwise we'll talk to you next time.